I guess the obvious question is, why aren't women attracted to security?
I don't think women aren't attracted to security. There are a whole stack of women in the security industry. I think it's actually part of business. It's challenging to get women at the senior levels and to get them engaged in the content and to stay in those roles. So it's a challenge for all industry groups. But I think there probably needs to be a greater recognition of the complementary disciplines that apply in security. So you don't necessarily need a specific or traditional security background to be able to lead a team or lead a system around security. Risk management is a very good discipline to move over with, as well as a really good understanding of the business that you're working in. With the right people around you and the right networks, you've got just as good a chance of creating a fantastic organisation and fantastic support to the organisation.
I mentioned earlier on, quite often what happens is women get into a position, it brings them to attention of the entire organisation and they can move on. Is that in fact the case? Has that been your experience?
Well, I've only been in the role for 10 months, so I guess we'll see.
That's a long time to do that.
But certainly it does, and security brings everybody to the attention of senior leaders and executives. And in most corporate organisations at the moment, there is a push to try and drive a diversity in thinking, which includes women, minority groups, youth, aged workers. And when they're identifying people who have the potential and the drive to do other roles or more senior roles, then of course they'll tap them on the shoulder. But I think that's the right way to go. It is about trying to find how you get a different thought process, move away from groupthink and get some new ideas into all parts of the business.
How did you end up in this area?
So I've actually been in my business for a long time, for about 14 years, and I actually identified security as an area of interest quite a few years ago. And one of the roles I was doing was actually designing and building our new sites, our new branches, which included the actual physical design, so working with the builders, the way the staff worked, the training, and there was a very big component around security because we were moving to open plan environments in banks. And it meant that I had to have quite a strong engagement with our risk management security experts and to understand what I was talking about in order to say this is the best way to go for our customers and for our staff. And from then on I had quite an interest in there and have driven a whole lot of other different businesses and run some other strategic projects and risk management functions. And this role came up and it's absolutely the one that I wanted. You
say you identified it as somewhere you want to go, but where do you go from here?
Well, I actually think for the first time in my career in this organisation, my next step would be out into the industry. I'm very passionate about this industry. I see a lot of opportunity and I think there's a lot of change abound. I think it's sort of on the cusp of transforming and I'm really excited by it. So,
tell me more about that, the cusp of transforming.
Traditionally, security has been seen as the effect of a number of events and an adjunct to business. When what I see is that it's a really critical part of a risk management system and a risk management process, and understanding from the outside in what the threats are coming towards us and how that actually affects a broader organisational purpose. You know, if you can translate that for your executives, you're able to really bring in the importance of security and drive that forward in the business and really make it such an integral part of the business, not just this group on the side that are all secret squirrel and you don't know what's coming at them. And the other exciting thing about it is that it's not competitive, so the industry works very strongly together and it is very much like a chain. You really want to strengthen every link. You want to work as a group across the industry, and that's really exciting. Not every group has that opportunity.
I go to a lot of industry events and stuff like that, and what I find interesting is typically you'll find a bunch of middle-aged white men sitting there and someone will be up at the front bemoaning the fact that nobody takes security seriously. I then will go to a university event with a bunch of young people that are studying security, and they go, we take security seriously, it's embedded in every area of our life, that's why we're interested, that's why we're studying it. That difference between the two, how do we bring the two sides closer together, do you think?
Well, I mean, it is a challenge, but it's really about utilising the industry contacts and connections with law enforcement and government and so on to understand security threat and understand what that means to the place that you're at, either as an individual or as an organisation. And if you can describe that threat in terms of how that puts at risk your reputation, customer trust in you, or the safety of your people, which is, you know, first and foremost the thing you're trying to protect, then you can make that real for people, and people will connect to what you're trying to do with them. It's that context. And I think that's been missing for such a long time, because historically security has been a little bit secretive, even within organisations. So people are struggling to understand why things are done, when they are done, and how they can be involved. But everybody I speak to is absolutely interested in what I do and what my team does, and would love to know more. I think when there are organisations that are engaging and that are delivering content and real value and information and mentorships through, you know, a new discipline, people are engaged. It's where there's not a lot of value or there's not a lot of ability to contribute that those organisations become defunct in some way. Obviously there's some opportunity to utilise technology to generate greater engagement, but I don't think that's the real challenge. I think youth are very interested in being part of something, and we should see that now. Unfortunately, a lot of youth are being part of something else that we would prefer them not to be. So how do we attract them to different concepts and different challenges and get them to problem solve in different ways? And it's about involving them, not telling them what to do.
What would your advice be then to a young person who hadn't even considered security as a future prospect, and suddenly they've met you and they've gone, what would your advice be to them if they were thinking about getting into the security field?
First and foremost, I'd give them a view as to what the industry involves and the huge array of different opportunities that people in security have, from developing their own businesses and following opportunities that way to running very significant and very important risk functions within the organisation. But depending on their background and their interests, people aren't a one size fits all. You can't fit into all of those categories. So I think it would be about finding what really gets them going. What are they interested in? Is it more the analysis and the understanding of threat, or is it the response and the crisis management? Or maybe it's the preparation and the investigation of what's coming through, and then starting to drive people in the right direction there. But further, I would put them in touch with some really experienced people in the security industry to talk through their career paths, because many of them have been incredibly varied. There's different ways and means to do things. And of course, tertiary and education and training is a great way to get your head around, well, what's involved in this type of discipline.
The challenges of the security business unit within a financial institution is always there. But it seems to me that the pressure is continuously put upon yourself and your team to cut costs, better service, better output, cut costs. How do you manage that? How do you get through that, and what are the strategies you put in place to be able to sell it back up to the management to say, no, we're not going to do this?
There has to be a really clear distinction between cutting cost and improving services. So continuous improvement isn't about just cutting costs. That just happens to be a happy benefit of looking at the way you do things and doing it in a better way. And then you also need to distinguish what's an operational cost, what's an expense to your business, as to what's an asset or an investment. And we have much less difficulty finding funding to invest in the controls that we have, provided we've articulated the risks well, than we do in terms of saying we need to spend more in expenses to be able to run this function. But we are constantly pushed, as all organisations should of their own accord, to find better ways of doing the same things and getting a better value out of it. And there are so many different ways to do things, so many ways to skin a cat, that the savings are there, they're naturally there, and we've had no problems finding them year after year.
Mario used an interesting expression there, selling it back up to management. Mm-hmm. Is that what you have to do?
Well, that's what we have to do anytime we spend money, to be fair. There's always a business case attached, or a return on investment. It's very difficult when your return isn't monetary, isn't related to a financial benefit necessarily. But there's a very strong impact on security, on trust with our customers. Our customers, that is a really big part of their perception, and they need to know that our staff are safe and our assets are safe, and their money is safe as well. So if we're not doing that, we're actually breaking down a whole value chain of income. And the second thing is that we do have a lot of regulatory oversight, so that does have a bit of bite for us. But at the end of the day, nobody's willing to put their hand up and say, I didn't want to spend money to protect our staff. They won't do it.